Welcome to another episode on the podcast, where we dive deep into the real stories of women who embrace their journeys and fight for what they truly want. I'm your host, Ashley. Today we have a special guest who's been on the front lines of the adult entertainment industry agencies, witnessing its allure and the darkest corners for men and women all over the world. Victoria, a former OnlyFans agency worker, walked away from the industry just after 5 weeks, disturbed by the reality of the industry. Victoria is now on a mission to educate what lies behind the smoke and mirrors of OnlyFans and the adult entertainment industry, urging young men and women to look beyond the superficial validation and build a life rooted in respect and self-love. Victoria, thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to it.
So let's jump straight into your story. You started working in an OnlyFans agency, and then after 5 weeks, you decided to leave. What got you into working for an agency? And then what was the pivot that got you out?
Yeah, definitely. I love that you're the first person to dive right in on this.
The best way. Let's just do it.
Yeah, so basically what had happened was in August of 2022, I just gotten back from an overseas trip, and I had a close personal friend of mine say that they had started this thing called an OnlyFans agency. Now, I didn't really know what OnlyFans was. I feel like OnlyFans is this weird thing that's kind of just been interjected into our culture, and everyone's heard of it, but no one really knows what it is. And so, yeah, I had this close personal friend of mine say, hey, someone in their world was already quite well known in OnlyFans, I guess you could say, and had a big social media following. And they were complaining about their agency. And so this person in my world was like, hey, well, I think we have a strong enough network. Let's build our own agency. And my background is actually in startups and marketing and all of that. So that's why they're like, hey, Vic, do you want to basically help us to build this business? So that's kind of how it all happened. And then, yeah, over the next 6 months, it was more again, a seeding business, as we know, a startup. It was an informal consultancy role, I guess you could say, especially because the person was a friend of mine. And so then, yeah, when I finally was on the books as a contractor and paid, I literally lasted 5.5 weeks, just as an accumulation of everything that I saw.
So what was it that you saw that was oh no, this is not the thing for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, I feel like OnlyFans kind of is this thing that was just interjected into our culture. So for me, when I was approached and asked to work at an agency, I've never personally been a consumer of porn. So where I didn't really understand exactly what it was. And I don't think a lot of people do. I think that people think that, oh, I know I did. I was like, I think that you can just sell your feet on there. I don't really know exactly what this is. And you hear these stories of, you can make a lot of money. It's liberating. It's a positive. So with that limited information that I had, I automatically just went, okay, this seems like a positive thing. But as I started working at the agency and really understanding what this is, I was like, oh, we call these girls OnlyFans creators. No. These are sex workers. We call this content creation, but this is actually porn. And just for people listening that are like, no, what are you talking about? There was a statistic that came out this year in this report on OnlyFans. 98% of the content on OnlyFans is of pornographic nature. So if you're kind of under this guise still that, no, I don't think it is what you think it is, I hear different. Actually, the statistics tell us that only 2% of content that is on OnlyFans is not porn. So this is basically the new era of how people are interacting with pornographic content. And so, yeah, to be honest, I'm seeing porn for the first time. I'm weirded out by it. I'm like, why are people watching, have sex? This is bizarre. I didn't understand it. But even just on another level of seeing the lifestyle that's portrayed on social media, and that's what we were doing, at the agency where I was at, it was, if you come work at this agency, you get elite dinners, elite parties, you get the lifestyle, you get everything that the world tells you is what success is. So come to our agency, come hang out with us, get a sisterhood, all these things. You just have to do OnlyFans. But again, we see that, the fast life, the cars, the designer, the dinners, all this stuff is still what we're programmed to believe is what success is. And so just on like a more deeper level, I'm living that life. I'm around these people that are supposed to be the pinnacle of success, people that are influential, you know, via followers, that, you know, these beautiful houses and all of this. And it's the most hollow existence I've ever experienced. It's numbing, the drugs, the alcohol, and it's just shallow. And so I'm seeing that, which is obviously creating a stirring in me. And then you can also just see, I guess, the brokenness of what this over-sexualized culture is programming into us. And, you know, these girls that I'd made relationships with that I'm like, you're smart, you're generous, you love your family, like whatever great quality about them. And it's just pushed down. It doesn't matter. It's squashed because the only value, the only thing that they think through our culture that they can bring to the world to matter is how hot they are, how they can sexualize themselves, and how much money you can make from doing that. And that is the only value that they bring. So for me, it was just honestly an amalgamation of all of this, seeing porn for the first time, seeing the way that our culture is destroying women, destroying their worth and their value, but then at the same time, how it's manipulating men. You can just see on the bigger picture, the ramifications that this was really having. So they're the real, like, deep reasons as to why I really started to struggle, with the agency and that lifestyle.
It's very interesting that you brought up the first statistic, because I was doing my research on it in preparation for this call. And 350 million users on or across OnlyFans platforms, with 500,000 coming each day. But of those numbers, it's like the average person makes less than $200 a month. So while we're seeing these men and women make millions annually, the real truth behind the smoke and mirrors of what is actually being made is $200 a month. Why do you think the image that's being portrayed is, oh, you can make millions, when really it's not?
There's so many elements, I feel, as to why that's happening, but I think that it's deception on a mass level. The OnlyFans as an organization is incredibly sophisticated in what they're doing right now. And this is honestly just the new era of pimping, of trafficking, of exploitation. I feel that we've now gone, it still exists in the physical, but now it's just gone online. And this is what it looks like. And so, of course, it's going to be different from the traditional, hey, like, come work at a brothel or come this or whatever, or the lies that were told for people to join the porn industry, 10 years ago. Instead of it being like a director, maybe you're in Hollywood and they're like, hey, come do our films and we'll make you famous. Now it's join OnlyFans and you'll have all of those things. And so I think that it's just migrated from the physicalness of what it once was to now just the digital era of what the reality is of it. And I think as well, again, our weird agenda in our culture that to be a liberated woman is to be a sexualized woman, and that all of these things are a positive. This is a mainstream narrative now. So of course, something like OnlyFans is going to be promoted in such a aggressive way, because it seems like the world wants us to think that this is what a good thing is. This is a desirable woman. And so I think that's why it is promoted in that way. And then the other reason is, I think, because it is such a minute % of people that are making so much money. Well, majority of them are famous. Like, you have people like Cardi B on OnlyFans. You have people like Iggy Azalea. So of course, again, it's going to be sensationalized when you have these mega stars that are on these platforms making the type of money that they are, to again entice that new era, that new generation to continue, so the platform can make money.
Do you feel like it's advertised in a way that makes younger girls, or even girls that aren't even platform young men, that it's a way to empower themselves and take control of their sexuality?
Totally, absolutely. At the agency, we kind of realized that the top 3 searched categories in porn is actually fresh teen, and barely legal. And which is, I know, like,
that's just, yeah.
Yeah, like, it is. It's horrific. And so, of course, we know that the porn industry wants the younger, the better.
Yeah.
And so, of course, it is targeted. I know specifically when we were doing our recruitment, we were looking for girls that looked fresh 18. And if they weren't, maybe they're like 19, 20, 21, would they say that they were 18, 19? because it makes more money.
Yeah. Or even if they're 21, 22, they're looking that younger age. Is it also from an agency's perspective, it's easier to convince a younger girl that she, could be really good at this or be really good at it, make a lot of money, have this lifestyle, as opposed to a woman who's in her, late 20s, maybe 30s. It's a much harder game to try and convince a woman like that as opposed to a younger girl.
Totally. Yeah. Like I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
You were in Melbourne and you were lucky enough to go and experience the fantastic United States. How do the two compare on the structure of the OnlyFans life? Like you can look at Hollywood, and I myself live in the United States. So looking at something like Hollywood, it's like magnified on a much more larger scale, if you will. The idea of what success is and going into Hollywood, the glitz, the glamour, this is what you could have. How do you feel that then links into something like OnlyFans?
I was in Miami, which is the OnlyFans capital of the world. It was wild. And one of my friends lives in this building where all of the rich people live and so that was that building where one of my friends lived. And so it was filled with OnlyFans people and all that type of stuff. And again, in America, it's such a positive and a negative. And this is what I love about the States is there's such I can do anything. Americans are dreamers. Yeah. And they go for it. And they have this beautiful culture where they'll be like, yeah, go for it, Vic. You want to build a business? You want to do this? You want to do that? Like, yes. Where in Australia, we have a different perspective when it comes to that type of hunger. And so, but I guess the negative of that is that Americans will therefore do anything because they need to matter. They need to be important. They need to have that hustle. And that's a big thing that I noticed in America is that it doesn't really matter where I went in the States. And it doesn't matter if it was in a secular way or if it was even in a Christian way. There was that need to have that level of success. And so I think that with that's why we see in America such a big enticement to do something like OnlyFans and why every girl that's an influencer does do OnlyFans. Because Americans in this hustle culture, as good of a thing as it is, it's such a negative because I don't think I ever heard a conversation, even like LA, for example, it's so normal that you're working 2 to 3 jobs. You have a side hustle, you have this, you have a business, this you're doing. Yep. Like you're weird if you.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, yeah. And so it's like, it's going to get exhausting. Of course, these people are going to go, well, I want to be influential. I want to matter. I want money. All the things that the American dream tells me. So why wouldn't I do OnlyFans? Like it makes sense when you look at it from that perspective, which I think is sad. And so that's more so, I guess, I guess you could say upper echelon mentality that I saw there. But then on the other perspective, I was in Redding, California, and I went to this church called Lighthouse Church and I spoke there. And the demographic of people there were people that were either like hardcore drug addicts, people out of prison, and homeless people. So a very different socioeconomic perspective that I had there. And I remember when I was speaking, there was a lady, as I was talking about OnlyFans and the agency and my journey, and she was just crying and crying and crying, the whole like weeping. And so when I finished speaking, I went up to her and I was like, hey, can I pray for you? Like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And she said that her daughter had recently passed away from alcohol withdrawal syndrome. And the reason why she had got so heavily into drinking is she started doing OnlyFans. And she's like, I never understood how she got into it. Again, I guess you could say small town, low SES, not a lot of education, not a lot of access to things. And she's like, but I understand now that there's these things called agencies. And so she probably got recruited. And I felt like there was this almost like divine revelation that I got in that moment of, as much as this is enticing, the more upper echelon people, where there is such a danger in something like OnlyFans is in these low SES, not a lot of opportunity, not a lot of education type of people, because they're seeing this lie of the Cardi B's, of the Iggy's or whatever. And so a lot of people in rural places are actually signing up because they think it's their ticket out. And it's really sad because it's just such an illusion. But I think that in America, that's heightened just because of this American dream culture, where somewhere in Australia, I think that the reason why this is more we have a little bit of that here and we copy America a lot. But I also think that Aussies are just very, in a weird way, we're so kicked back, don't you think so? It's just like, yeah, mate, like I'll just jump on, I'll do a little bit of work because I don't want to really much, but I feel like that's kind of mentality. So you can see the differences in why people, I think, in America are enticed by something like OnlyFans to why I think people in Australia are enticed by it, if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. And I agree with Australians are so laid back. Laid back and have a very just go with the flow mentality. Whereas Americans they dream big and they go hard in every facet of their life, from sports teams, political parties to their jobs. And you are right in the aspect of living in certain parts of the United States to make it or to get to the place that you want to be. Sometimes 2-3 jobs plus a business is needed. So that want or desire to be able to be like, okay, I can make so much money over here, or at least it appears to be. I can see how it could be so attention grabbing. And like you said, for those rural, low economical areas. And I personally feel like if we zoom the lens out and look at the sex industry for what it was originally, or even the porn industry, that's, in my opinion, kind of the ideal girl or man that's targeted. Someone who's looking for a way out, someone who's had extensive trauma, someone who is unfortunately, the old dating a pimp and get unfortunately turned out in that aspect. I personally believe that no one enters into the sex industry because they want to do it. It's this is what I need to do in order to get out, but there is other ways in order to get out.
Yeah. Absolutely. But I think that the scary part of where we see society going is that I agree with you 1,000%. But with this like sensationalism of OnlyFans, it's like this weird, like when I go to schools and I talk to young girls, they go, there's a specific TikToker, Anna Paul, and Anna Paul's one of our biggest OnlyFans girls in Australia, and she's a massive influencer. And her demographic is teenagers. And so whenever I go into schools, I always ask the teenagers, do you guys know who Anna Paul is? And they're like, yes, I love her. Did you know her? And I'm like, no, but why do you like her? What is it about her? And so we're seeing now, it actually it's slowly changing that porn and doing porn was always in the shadows. It was always a means to an end. It was always extortion or trauma. And that's why these people were being targeted. But now it's almost a idolized job. Like girls tell me that they think the only way they can be like Anna Paul and be happy and travel like verbatim is to do OnlyFans. So we're seeing that there's actually a flip of it. OnlyFans, yeah, of course I'll sell myself. What do you mean? Like I get an amazing life if I go do porn. Where before we never saw that. So I think that that's why as well it's kind of scary what OnlyFans is doing in our culture. Because every girl's an OnlyFans girl. Every girl is rewarded for doing OnlyFans in quotation marks. So of course, these younger girls are going to think that this is what I need to do to be liked and loved and rewarded. And this is actually a positive. Yeah. So I think that's where it's kind of getting a little bit scary, I guess you could say, from it being in the shadows and being, this really horrible thing and a last means to an end. It's now seeming like it's the first choice and the preferred choice.
Which is very scary. Like if you're going into schools and that's I get to travel if I do OnlyFans. So do you think that the sex industry as a whole, if we zoom out the lens, it's almost like there's a disconnection from OnlyFans being the sex industry and OnlyFans being pornography. So it's like, well, I do OnlyFans and it's not porn, so it's okay. So it's like they haven't actually made the connection that what I'm doing is pornography. Just because it's on OnlyFans doesn't take away from that fact.
Yep, totally. And this is something that I try to let people know. Like people think that the OnlyFans industry is here. And yeah, as you said, the sex industry is here. But what they don't understand, as you said, it is literally the exact same thing. And there's no difference between being a stripper and then getting naked on OnlyFans. There's none. It's all a part of the sex industry and you're all a sex worker. So it's this weird, as you're saying, bizarre deception that is happening in this desensitization of it. Oh, no. I'm not a sex worker. I don't do porn. I just do OnlyFans. And it's like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, it's like you haven't quite made the link in your head yet, because we've decided as a society that OnlyFans is okay, but not being in the sex industry, but you've yet to realize it's exactly the same thing. One's just been made okay. Do you think society because OnlyFans really, really took off around COVID time. Everybody lost their jobs. They're looking for ways to make money. And then that was probably the peak. And you mentioned earlier that the societal changes that's happening, women aren't realizing what it's going to do to them, or men who's jumping on their sides. And then on the flip side, we're not realizing what's happening to men, them being the most consumer based of the platform. What do you think is happening with the society as a whole because of it?
It's a great question. There's two ways that you can look at this. And I need to preface that everything that I look through in my lens now is obviously with the lens of faith and with biblical truth. I see things in society now. We can actually have a look at the Bible, and the Bible will tell us why things are the way they are now. And so everyone has some sort of belief to a capacity that there's this element of good and evil. There's a tension in the world, and there's always good and there's always bad. And so when we have a look at that and we put our framework of, okay, there's always driving factors of duality in our world. There's a negative force and a positive force. Well, what would a negative force want in our society? A negative force would want there to be the destruction of marriage, because a marriage in the biblical context is one of the most powerful things that you can have, because a marriage actually is to represent and reflect the way that Jesus died for us. That's what it says in the Bible. And so it's actually called a mystery, because Jesus, him dying for us, is kind of a mystery. Like we can't grasp it. And so that's what a marriage is. So if you can attack a marriage, well, what comes from that? You attack the significance of sex, because sex is actually one of the most important sacred things that we can do, because what comes from sex? Life. And children are one of the most valuable, they are the most valuable, precious thing that we have on this earth. And being able to raise a child in a home with like a mother and a father, and what that builds is a healthy person in society. So if you can start to kind of notch away at all those things, so what do? You say that marriage is just a piece of paper. Well, then people don't want to get married anymore. So then the significance of that is gone. So then people don't respect relationships anymore. So then what happens there? Okay, well, if we don't respect relationships, we're not going to respect our bodies and having sex, because we're not getting in relationships anymore. We're just having sex with anyone and everyone. So it diminishes the significance of that. And we can talk about, even on a neurological level, what that actually does. And all the different hormones that are actually released, and chemicals. And the more that you continue to have sex, the more that these hormones actually become numb to you. And so there's so many other problems that we see in that capacity, and why as well pornography is so dangerous because of that dopamine cycle. And I personally know people that have been so numb to pornography that they've actually gone and acted out wanting to rape women, molest their siblings, like done really horrific things because how numb they are from watching porn. Well, it works the same in sex. If you're having sex all the time, you need more crazy sex. You need to do all these. So you can see that when you start to do that, then what was that next element? Children. Well, what is a consequence, a null consequence of sex? You create life. What happens if you're not in a relationship, you're having sex, you get pregnant, you think this is a problem, therefore I need to do something to correct this problem. So what do we see now? We see an abundance of people thinking that getting pregnant is a problem, therefore I need to correct that problem. So I look at that and I go, this is what the sexual revolution is encouraging. Have sex with anyone, don't get in a relationship, it doesn't matter. You can see, wouldn't that be a pull of something negative in our society? Because everyone knows how much it sucks hooking up. Everyone knows how much it hurts you. No one that I have ever met has had a, termination of a pregnancy and not felt anything towards it.
Yeah.
No one's ever gone through a divorce and not cared about it.
Yeah.
So we can see that even though we're promoting these values in our society, if we break it down, it's hurting people. So then it's like, of course, if we believe in this push-pull of a positive and a negative, we can see that this negative influence is actually what's destroying our society, because a positive influence in our world is saying, hey, do you know how special you are and the significance of waiting till marriage to have sex because you understand why. You understand your value. As a girl, you go, I don't want to give that out to anyone because I know that my body is one of the most precious and purest things that I can have for my self-respect and my worth, and for a male too. If I have sex before marriage, just say, or a relationship, it creates a false sense of intimacy. So I actually don't know this person. So I'm labeling it with sexual intimacy, but they're kind of a stranger. Now, I've even thought about that. I'm like, yeah, there's people I was with for like years, and I don't think I really knew them because I thought I knew them because I was having sex with them. And then when I've been in relationships and I've taken that off like not done that at all, I'm like, I have to talk to them. I have to think about how to communicate with them. I can't use my body in fights. Like I can't. And so you realize the significance of when you take that off. Then you go, okay, we know. And it's just a fact that broken homes, it destroys children. It doesn't matter if you get divorced when you're young, when you're old, whatever. It destroys children's reality of stability. So if you can have a family that stays together, like take faith out of it, but just a family that stays together, it does so much for a child and the stability and safety that they feel. So then you can see, okay, if we ever look at all of these things, these seem to be good. Wait until it's a significant partner, because then the likelihood of, if you have a child, you're going to keep the child, you're going to bring that child up in a home together. Therefore, you're probably going to have a better outcome from the good influence than the bad influence. But we're seeing that we idolize this bad influence through the sexual revolution, through everything we're talking about. And that's why we see this destruction of society. And so I think that if you believe in a pool of good, a pool of like good and evil, and dark and light, you can see why dark would want all of these things that we say are good in our society, because it's actually destroying us.
I actually completely understand what you're saying. Even if we remove religion from it, and a lot of people might be spiritual based and do believe in the dark and the light within oneself. So if we look at that on a bigger lens, there's dark and light within society and everybody else. And the thing that essentially it's balance. It's balance what creates the polarizing effect of both. And I think right now what we're seeing is the pendulum swinging. So what came from, women being able to have complete autonomy over their bodies and be able to be open in their sexuality has somehow, well, we know how, has just full pendulum swung all the way over to the other side. I don't think it's happening yet, but I think a swing back to center is trying to happen. Like it is trying, but I think it's going to take a lot more than what's currently out there, I think, based on things like OnlyFans popping up all over the place and encouraging the exploitation, as you will.
We can totally see, like, as you said, I love that.
It's the pendulum happens in everything. And I use the pendulum because it's what I find most in my life as well. You have to experience one extreme and the other to realize that balance is needed. And if you can find balance immediately, then you avoid the pendulum swing. But most people, including myself, will learn to both extremes to find the balance. It's just how quickly that pendulum comes back. Have you always been very heavily faith-based?
No. I don't think anyone could ever say that they were basically a digital pimp, but yet they were, following a life with the Lord. My faith journey really happened when I was actually working at the OnlyFans agency. And so this is why I love this story so much, because I thought Christians are these cookie cutter people. You have to be perfect before you can come to God and all of these things. And it's like, no, actually, where I encountered Jesus and the revelation of this was I was being selfish. Some people try to argue with me and say, you were looking for God. No, I wasn't. Actually, I was working at the OnlyFans agency. I was really struggling with the job. I started asking people at my work, like, what do you think about this? Do you think it's good or bad? And I wasn't satisfied with the answers, but there was something in me that I was like, this just feels yuck, but everyone's telling me this is okay. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go offset all the bad that I'm doing and I'm going to do something good, because that's what people think, is a very normal thing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go help a bunch of refugees. That was my thought. I was like, if I go overseas and help refugees, it'll make me feel better about myself. I'll do something good. And I was building a medicinal cannabis company with one of the owners of the OnlyFans agency. So I'm like, okay, if I go help a bunch of refugees, by the time I come back, our cannabis company will be up and running and I don't have to work at the agency anymore. I'm a genius. So that was the lens that I was looking through, again, in my selfishness to just make myself feel better by using, and so I had this random memory. And I remember when I was a kid that like sometimes we went to this church and I was like, oh, okay. And like, unfortunately, I would say that growing up, my household didn't reflect a lot of biblical principles really in any ways. But I had this memory that like when I was a kid, we like went to this church and they had a refugee program. So I was like, okay, sick, I'll go there. So I signed up for this like thing to help refugees. And I got a call from this girl one day. And she's like, hey, I heard you want to connect with the church. Do you want to come down? Let's have a conversation. And I thought that we were going to talk about refugees. I'd kind of alluded to what was going on a little bit, but that's really what I thought we were doing. So it was a Thursday. And I remember I rocked up to church and I remember sitting in the car and I just am like, I can't walk into that church. Like, I'm such a bad person. I will literally burst into flames. Like, I genuinely thought that. I was like, I can't do it. I can't walk in there. And I remember just wrestling with myself at the front of this church on a Thursday. And I was like, screw it, Vic, you're here. Just walk in. So I go in and I end up word vomiting for hours to this poor girl about like everything in my life. And she was so beautiful. She just goes, I really think you should come to church this Sunday. I think you'll really resonate with the speaker. So I was like, all right. So I rock up to church on a Sunday. And this lady in church, which I was like, this is wild, is talking about this over-sexualized culture. And she's talking about how the next generation is being destroyed through things like OnlyFans. She's talking about how young boys are taking their life on Snapchat because they're getting extorted for like photos of themselves and just all these horrific things that are happening to our youth because us as adults have allowed this culture into our world, and look at how it's destroying the next generation. Well, I work for an OnlyFans agency. And so I'm sitting there and I'm getting wrecked. There's just something inside of me that simultaneously my heart was breaking because I knew I was a part of this problem. But it was also this relief of knew this was wrong. I knew there was another path. I knew that I wasn't crazy. So when this lady finished speaking, I actually ran up to her and I went up to her and I said, hi, my name's Victoria. I work for an OnlyFans agency and I hate myself. And you would assume that, again, maybe these Christians would be like, you're going to burn in hell. Like you're condemned and, you know, we need to pray for you. And she did none of that. She just goes, do you want to have lunch with me? And so she had lunch with me and she answered all my questions. And I said, isn't this like a safe injecting room? You know, we give people a safe place to do porn. People need a safe place to do drugs. Like, isn't this liberating? Isn't this women's freedom? And she just answered my questions. She didn't, like, I can't even remember. I had someone ask, well, did they pray for you after? Did they lead you to Jesus? I said, no, none of that. Like, I wasn't like some little puppy that they could try and lead to God. And I was just treated as a human that was asked, like, had my questions answered. And there was no conversation about Jesus or anything. But I remember that Sunday, as I said, it was like this relief that was in me that I knew this was wrong. And I didn't understand what this church thing was. I didn't understand what Jesus was. I had no context to anything, but I just knew that this was a better path than the path I was on. So I have to see where this goes. So that was a Sunday. So by the Friday, I quit the OnlyFans agency and I walked away from every single thing in my life, friendships, businesses, every single capacity you can think of. I walked away from it and I've been on this journey ever since.
That's huge. To literally completely turn, like you literally turned a page in a single day to be like, this is no longer for me. I need to go over here. I don't know what it looks like, but this is the better path, which is phenomenal. Like huge, phenomenal.
As to how I ended up in those positions.
Oh, and where do you think the standard needs to be set or could be set from either sexes to try and pivot society back to a place of balance, if you will?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Oh, I think that's one of my favorite questions I've ever been asked. Thank you. That is just spectacular. Honestly, I talk about this a lot and I never want to be someone that, because again, with me, I didn't have someone shoving faith down my throat. I came to it on my own. But what I have learned on this journey is that even if we took some of those values and implemented them into our lives, we would see such a major change. And it's just small things like in relationships nowadays, we see them as how can the person serve me? How can they fulfill my needs? Yeah. Well, if you read scripture, it actually says the way that you should be in a relationship is how can I serve you? Because the more that I can love on you, the more you love on me, and then the better it is. And it's this weird thing of always, how can I be first? How can I love first? How can I forgive first? How can I champion first? And I think if we just started seeing a little bit of that, I think if we started to champion in people on an individual level every day, instead of like, babe, you look so hot. Like, I love your outfit. Of course, but start to champion people for, wow, you ask great questions. Do you know you're so articulate? You make me feel so calm when I'm around you. You're really safe. If we start to change the narrative on what we want to champion in people and what we actually reward people for, I think we'll see a major change, because I don't think people actually understand how significant this over-sexualization is impacting our culture. It actually bleeds into every single facet of our life and across multi-generations as well. So I think if we can even just start on a really basic level of going, you know what, I want to be countercultural. I want to champion you for something different. I'm so sick of this over-sexualization, and start to just, I think do that. Love people first, forgive people first, champion people first, instead of thinking, what can I take? What can I get? As weird as it sounds, I think it would be groundbreaking and so profound that imagine in that situation where you're in an argument and you hear this little nugget and you go, well, instead of me trying to go at that, okay, no, actually, how can I try to love this person in this situation? Whoa, and then watch the trajectory of that relationship change, you know? And so it seems really simple, but it seems to be one of the most complex things that we can do as humans. But I think that that could be a beautiful place. And the beautiful thing in that is you don't have to rely on anyone. It's not you and I doing a podcast and creating a movement, but it's actually, I can take this on in my everyday life. And if I can do that, I can actually see the world around me change.
That's actually a phenomenal answer, because it's not shifting. It's not shifting to somebody else who could do it. It's like, what can I do it? And it's as simple as, how can I love somebody just that little bit better? I don't personally believe that or think that we've seen the true fallout of what's to come from OnlyFans. Do you think we have, or are we yet to see it in generations to come?
This is my, I have no basis on this other than it's just my thoughts.
Yeah.
So take this with a grain of salt, I guess. I look at my parents' generation. And so both my parents are immigrants and they moved here because of the ramifications of World War I. So my grandparents lived through World War I. My granddad even actually was in the war and stuff like that. And so what happens in that is we see war is the worst of humankind. It is horrific. And so, of course, there is trauma that is passed down to then our parents, very close, our generation, our parents. But then I think that what has happened is that our grandparents were that very traditional and almost not very cold. You know what I mean? We can see that as a generalization of beating your kids, not loving your kids, very general of what I'm saying right now, but I hope people hear what I'm saying. And then the ramifications of war. So then their parenting was so skewed for our parents. And then I think that my parents especially have gone, I didn't want to do what my parents did. But then I think the generation above me, so the millennials, have now taken that to an extreme, which is why we see what we see in our culture today of overparent, soft parenting, gentle parenting. You can be whatever gender you want to be. You can have sex with whatever you want to have sex with. They've taken it to an extreme. So I think their children will actually be the ramifications of their parenting. But then I think the Gen X, my generation, because we've seen the madness, a lot of us are course correcting. So I do think that that generation that the millennials are raising are going to maybe potentially be more crazy. But then the I'm Gen X, Gen Z, whatever I am.
Whatever letter it is.
Whatever I is.
So I'm a millennial.
Okay. Yeah. But do you know what I mean in that? Not to say you specifically, but
things. I get it. I grew up in the generation, and I obviously can't speak for every millennial out there, where hitting children was like a punishment, or I give you something to, if you want to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. That type of generation, it was very hard, and a child was treated like an adult, if you will. And the generation of children are seen, not heard. Not hit, not do anything like that. Be super, you do you. How can I help you? Like, it's now the child is telling the parent like how they feel, how they want, what they need, and all that type of stuff. So on some level, it's like, yeah, that's good. On the other hand, I have some millennials who are still choosing to show up as their parents did. So it's like a weird mix. I think in the United States, it's more to your point. It's the let's be an animal if we want to. Like, the child can do no wrong. So it's like a weird mix. And then Gen X that's coming through is seeing all of it and be like, I don't think this is the right way either.
That's a great way to put it. I think that it probably may get a little bit crazier. And I don't think that we'll see the true ramifications on our youth with this over-sexualized culture until they are adults. But I do think that maybe the children that will come from my generation, potentially, again, this is a massive generalization. Yeah. I think that they may have that pendulum swing to a little bit more of traditional values, I guess you could say. And then maybe with that generation, we might see a little bit more of this course correction potentially.
I think I agree with you too. A course correction is coming in with some families I've noticed in both millennial and then Gen X in the this is not the way, the over-sexualization, traditional family values are like trying to come back in. And then I wonder what it will be like just hearing you say that some children are already committing suicide because of, like, on Snapchats, what they're being sent, right? I wonder, and again, this is just my perspective and opinion, it's what happens to those children of people who used OnlyFans and now it's on the internet forever. What happens to that child when the child goes to school?
Well, we're already seeing, and I actually think I did a little post about some articles that I found on this. And that's the thing, we're already seeing this. And there's actually a great video as well, if I can send it to you, if people want to watch it as well. Mothers that have been talking about that. And children are getting expelled from school. They're getting bullied. They're getting sent naked photos of their mum. All these horrific things because, again, mainly in America, but because of how glorified OnlyFans is. And then I'm hearing horrific stories of, I read an article that the dad that was split was asking the mum, can you please stop like doing OnlyFans? Our child is getting bullied. And she's like, no, like this is empowering. Like he has to learn to deal with like really horrible things. And so I think that it's going to be really hard. It is for teenagers nowadays. It is so hard. And we all grew up, even for me, like Instagram became big in like year 9, I would say. And Instagram isn't what it is today. And we've never seen it the way that it is now for our teenagers. Every school I go to, there has been nudes leaked. Every single girl has been asked for naked pictures. Yeah. So common. Like all of these things that we just didn't have growing up. And then the average age now is 8 years old.
Wow.
So yeah. And so now, like this non-for-profit that I work with, they have programs that go from grade 1 all the way to year 12, because we need to start talking to our children about good pictures, bad pictures online. What do you do? Not if you see porn, but when you see porn, because now it's just inevitable in this generation that they're going to be exposed to these things, and it's just happening at a younger rate.
Yeah, it's like younger and younger that the child is being exposed to things that I probably wasn't exposed to until I was like 15 or 16, and now it's like 8.
Yeah.
Victoria, if a young man or woman is sitting at home listening and thinking about jumping into the OnlyFans industry, what advice can you leave with them?
And the biggest thing that I love to encourage people is just take a second. So just say if you're sitting there and you're like, I want to, start an OnlyFans. I want you to sit and put a timer on your phone for 5 minutes. And I want you to ask yourself why. And so if you go, I have no money, well, why? Because, like I'm working all that, like whatever it is, like just why? Because what will happen if you sit there and you're brutally honest with yourself as to your why, you're going to get to your root cause. And so when you can get to your root cause, then you can actually act on that. because no one actually free willingly, I believe in my heart of hearts, wants to sell themselves online. No one wants to really do porn. There is always an underlying root cause of why you're doing something. I don't believe that you could be a whole person and go and want to do something like porn. And so I would really encourage a girl to sit there and just ask yourself why, just for 5 minutes. And at the end of that timer, just see what comes out of it and then act on that accordingly is always my encouragement. And then for young men, every single guy I talk to, they all know that porn destroys their minds. They all know it. They all talk about how much they hate it, how much, they want to get rid of it and all of that. And so if that's you and you're sitting here and you're like, yeah, like I watch it because it gives me comfort. I'm bored. I feel like it's a relief, like whatever it is. Again, there's so many resources out there to be able to help you. It's not normal to watch porn. It's not normal to want to consume people like this. And what it actually does in your brain for a male is the more you watch porn, there was a study that was done in Canada. One of my friends was telling me about it, this psychologist, that when men watch porn and then they look at an image of a woman, it actually lights up when they watch porn and then they look at an image of a woman and look at an image of tools, it lights up the same part of their brain. So what that is telling us is that males view women the exact same as they view tools, as an object. So what do you think that is doing in your life to skew and destroy every single relationship that you have? If you know that on a neurological level, you're literally ruining your brain to view women as an object, it also makes like the front part of your brain smaller. So it decreases your capacity to actually even make good decisions. It increases depression, increases anxiety, all these other things. It literally destroys you in every single capacity and actually makes your decision thinking capacity smaller. So it makes you like not as smart. So I really want guys to just hear this and think about that and go, whoa, like this isn't some chick making this stuff up. This is all studies that you can find online. This has all been trialed and tested. So it's destroying your very essence, and it's all done to make money off you, to exploit you, to extort you, to literally keep you addicted so people can make money, like the person that I once was. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's true, because this is what I was literally doing as a job. So I just hope that people hear that as a girl and just go, okay, I'm going to give myself 5 minutes. I'm just going to think about the why. Mm-hmm. And then for a guy, I'm going to go, wow, there is a lot of harsh realities to consuming porn. And it's basically to extort me. And I just hope that maybe that does something in someone's heart to go, nah, like this is whack. Like I don't want to be a part of that.
Truly powerful. Truly, truly powerful. Like truly. The why question you can translate to every area of your life. You just have to be willing to be so brutally honest with yourself to get to the true essence and reason as to why you want something, why you want to do anything, or why you're being motivated to do it.
I agree with that.
Victoria, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on today, and I'm so thankful that you're able to come on and join with me to have this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had the best time, and I truly meant what I was saying before. Your questions, the way you articulate yourself is just excellent. It's wonderful. This has been so enjoyable. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Victoria.